So good afternoon and welcome to this third industry orientation webinar being organized by the Indian Society of Structural Engineers. I welcome you all and a very special welcome and compliments to the young civil engineering students who are with us today. We are joined for today's webinar and the fresh graduates and of course our two experts who are with us. My name is Umesh Dhargarkar and I am an advisory trustee of the Indian Society of Structural Engineers. Now, before we actually move over to the actual conduct of the webinar, let me give you a brief introduction about what we are trying to do in the Indian Society of Structural Engineers for the civil engineering students. Well, this is an initiative which took birth in the month of June, right? And from there, actually, in the last 2 months, I would say that we have done some amount of work which I would like to share with you. Basically, the initiative is it has been formed with two objectives. The first one is to make the transition of the fresh graduates, I mean our civil engineering students, from institute to industry more meaningful and smoother, right? So they get to know about the industry when they graduate. At least they start getting some idea and get some exposure about the industry. That's the first objective. And the second objective, which we'll take up a little later, would be to make the civil engineering education itself more industry relevant. Now, while on this journey, this journey began in the month of sometime in the first week of June, wherein the president of Indian Society of Structural Engineers, Shantilal Jain, formed a Telegram group of civil engineering students. And slowly the students started getting registered on that group. Now I'm happy to share with you today that we got 2,700 civil engineering students on that group today. And that is something which has encouraged us to move forward in the same direction. Now what we did thereafter, after forming the group, is that we decided to conduct webinars for the information of the students. And the first webinar which we conducted was an inaugural webinar, wherein we called or we invited a reputed civil and structural engineer with diverse experience in the construction industry, right from civil engineering to structural engineering to project management to going right up to the level of dispute resolution, arbitration, and conciliation. That was Mr. N.N. Srikhande, who was kind enough to join us and address the students on that day. That was on 24th of June. Then thereafter we decided that, it was realized that it is broadly understood that when the students, they graduate from the college, they don't have much idea about the industry. Well, I would say that would perhaps be an understatement. The thing is that they are not even aware about what happens in the industry. They are not even aware about what are the departments or what are the different fields of civil engineering and construction industry. And therefore, we decided that we would start conducting industry orientation webinars for them, wherein for each such industry orientation webinar, we would select a theme or a field from the construction industry, and we would call the experts on that field, right? And those experts will tell the students about what happens in their field and how they are handling it, what kind of challenges they are facing, and what kind of opportunities are there. Yeah, just a minute. I was telling you about our inaugural webinar, which we conducted on 24th of June, and thereafter we decided to conduct a series of industry orientation webinars, wherein we would call the experts to talk about specific fields about what actually happens in the industry and give the students a picture about what they can expect and the kind of opportunities and the kind of futuristic view of the construction industry. The first industry orientation webinar which we conducted was on structural design services. The second was on geotechnical services. And the third one which we are going to conduct today is on construction project management. But we realized that construction project management is a very big field, and therefore this whole aspect of construction project management can be logically broken into two parts. The first part is what we can call as pre-construction part, which actually would involve planning, estimation, then engineering, preparing drawing, tender documents, the bidding process, and things like that. All those things which happen before you actually go to the construction stage. So for that, we are having this webinar which is there today, and then our next webinar will be focused on the construction part of the construction project management, which will involve all those activities when the actual constructions happens at site. So that would uh, uh, involve, say, quality control, progress monitoring, and all those supervisions and things like that. So for today's webinar, we have called experts from two parts of the industry in the construction project management, pre-construction part. One of our experts, who is Mr. Abhishek Sharma, who is from Tata Consulting Engineers. He is from the consulting side of the field. Whereas our second expert, Mr. Diganta Kapadia, who comes from B. Bilimoria and Company, who will be from the actual construction, the contracting part of the field. So this is what we are having today. We have got two experts from the industry. To give you a one-line introduction from my side about Mr. Abhishek Sharma, he is a senior engineer handling business development and digitalization. Now, digitalization is something which in our times, or perhaps even maybe a couple of years ago, we had not heard of something like this. What is digitalization? Is it a part of IT? What is it doing in our construction field? How we can leverage those digital technologies for the futuristic scenario of our construction industry? That's what Abhishek will be talking about. Then thereafter, we will be having an address from Mr. Diganta Kapadia, who is the managing director of B. Bilimoria and Company, a major contractor in the field of construction. So before we move ahead with the actual presentations, we will have like this, that we'll have presentations by both the experts, after which we'll have the question and answers. So please be ready with your questions. Shoot them on whichever platform you are connected with us. And may I now request Paresh to formally introduce Abhishek so that then he can take over and make his presentation. Paresh.
Yes. Good afternoon, friends. In industry orientation webinar with focus on construction management pre-construction stage, we have two industry experts with us today. First, I would like to introduce he is working as senior business development and digitization Tata Consulting Engineer. He has always been a keen learner, and this penchant of learning has increased gradually over the years. A civil engineer by education, he has inclination towards statistics, 3D models, and reports. Fortunately, he got the opportunity of using these skills to add value to his employers and all other stakeholders. He has worked in various teams and in diverse roles like sales and marketing, construction quality control, railway track design, project management scheduling, and many more. Currently, he is utilizing business intelligence, drone technology, and digitalization in his everyday challenges to achieve greater productivity, higher team satisfaction, and make the business more relevant to the changing times. With this brief introduction of our industry expert, I would like Mr. Umesh Dhargalkar to take over. Thank you.
Abhishek, it's your screen now. You can start your presentation.
Sure. Thanks a lot. Thank you for your kind words, sir. As Sir gave a very generous and a very nice introduction. So this is the agenda for today's presentation. My name is Abhishek Sharma, and my intention of this presentation is to reach out to you and try to explain it to you why these technologies and particularly all the technologies in the scope of pre-construction, why they are important. So there is this quote by Abraham Lincoln on the top and the bottom
Abhishek, you
left.
are not fully visible. Huh? Your top part is not visible. I think you have to position yourself like that.
All right.
You
Or
are a
else,
little lower.
okay, sure, not a problem.
Ha, ha.
So,
Good.
thank you. Abraham Lincoln once said that if you give me 6 hours to chop down a tree, I will spend the first 4 in sharpening the axe. And today's presentation is more about that. So, before we jump into construction management proper, we should look at what project management is. And I would not, spend a lot of time on these slides, but all of us are to some extent familiar with the definition of a project. It's a temporary endeavor. While when we talk about management, it is the process of controlling the results, and so the expectations should be the same. Now project management ranges from software development to construction industry and to many other industries as well. So either you are preparing a sweet dish for the first time, or if you're constructing the world's tallest tower, you're using the same principles. Now let's have a look at what are these principles, and irrespective of which project it is or which industry that project comes from, these are the 5 basic stages of a project. Initiating, where you take a decision of whether you're going forward or not, or the basic planning, and after that, in
Abhishek,
detail in planning, you find out. Yes,
sorry to
hello.
interrupt, Abhishek. Your top part is getting cut.
I'll do one thing.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Maybe some screen adjustment or something. और थोड़ा नीचे. This could be good. This could be
All
good.
right.
Right,
Sure.
thank you.
So, not a problem, sir. So, when we speak about planning, it's basically finding out if we have the required resources and the methodologies in place, and then execution is where we actually start to dwell deeper, and there is quantitative work which is done. Then, to ensure that the execution which we are doing is as per the requirement and the end goals are met, there is monitoring and control, and at the end there is closing and handover. So, for the stakeholders of a construction project, these are the stages: planning, bidding, design, construction, and operations. And these are all the stakeholders which are involved. Now, coming from the consultant's background, I'll be just briefly mentioning what is the role of a project management consultant in any construction project. So, some of the key points which I would like to highlight are that coordination of all project development activities, then your finalizing of project execution strategy, change management. So basically what happens is, irrespective of all the stakeholders, like in the simplest terms, project management consultants' responsibility is to make sure that all the deliverables are in place as required by the client, or whatever the end goals of the project are. So about construction project management, these are the phases of a construction construction project. So we start from construction, the concept master planning, and engineering, procurement, construction, commissioning, operations. Now, the first 3 points which you see, concept master planning, engineering, and procurement, are the ones which fall under the scope of today's webinar, which is pre-construction. So before you go forward towards construction, these are the steps which are required. The proper site selection is to be done. Then the environmental impact assessment is done. Apart from that, the pre-feasibility and feasibility studies are done. In engineering, particularly, you go to detail and basic engineering estimations for bidding. And speaking of bidding, in procurement, you do the tender documentation, then pre-qualification of the bidders and bid management. So, and if I may divide it into 3 focus areas: pre-construction, construction, and post-construction. These are the basic, steps which are taken under these focus areas. So as I mentioned earlier, the scope of this webinar is pre-construction. So the rest of the points will be covered in future webinars or future sessions. So you see, constructability review, procurement management, project management procedure finalization, then project schedule preparation. project execution strategy. So these are the basic activities. Now, all of these jargons would not mean much, so I'll break them down into simplest terms. Now, what happens is a consultant is supposed to know how much amount of resources are required, at what stage are they required, and where are they coming from. Basically, if we talk about procurement broadly, then similarly, if we speak of the contracting and financial procedures, so on and so forth. For these resources, what are the contracts in place? Are we managing the contracts and are we updating them on time? Then engineering management is more about where are the drawings coming from and what is the schedule for those drawings, and are there any expected delays in those drawings, and will they hamper the overall progress of the project or not. Now, going forward, now this is the crux of the webinar, which I want to emphasize maximum on. So the digital solutions for the pre-construction stage are very important, because at this point of time, you have the opportunity of leveraging upon the old information which you already have. By you, I mean if your company has done 10 to 20 projects, it's important that you grow along the learning curve. So they should not be a step back. You should not tackle each project as unique, because there must be some sort of information that you've already captured about similar projects in the past. So here, what you can see in the circle is, whenever we speak of BIM or building information modeling, people often confuse it with the word BIM in the abbreviation. They confuse it with actual building or a multi-story building, if I may. But how I understand it is, building is more like a verb. It's the verb. So the process of a construction project or any other project for that matter coming into picture, that is where building information modeling is required. So what do we do during planning stage? If you may see on the screen. So during planning stage, we take certain steps and we identify and we standardize the terms that we are going to use. We standardize the benchmarks or the matrices that we are going to use. So if just speaking out in simplest terms again, so if there is a column, what are the dimensions of a column which are expected? Then what will the column be constructed with? Just a second, sorry. So yes, sorry for the interruption. Now, once that information is in place, once you know that what are the standards, what are the codes which are to be used, how are we defining columns and different resources, that after that we can go forward and towards conceptual design. How will the building look like? The two-dimensional drawing basically. And once that is done, the double line drawings and other drawings are in place. After that, we can go forward and keep on adding layers of information to that draft which we have prepared, wherein we come over to your detailed designs. So under detailed designs, you go into the nitty-gritties of the material which is being used, what is the strength of the material, and in further detail, you will also be doing analysis on that. So by analysis, I mean what are the load-bearing structures, and to what extent what are the load extent that it can take. Then again, this was all about your pre-construction stage. I'll just list down the further stages, but I'll not dwell deeper into them because they will be reserved for other webinars. So documentation is something which is done throughout the life cycle of the project. This also becomes an integral part of the building information model at the end. And fabrication for all the components, 4-dimensional and 5-dimensional models, which we will be covering later in a couple of slides. Then logistics, where are the resources coming from, how they are moving. And most importantly, now you see, once a project is completed, by completed, I mean once the building is erected and it's handed over to the client and people start using the building, that is not the end of the building information modeling. Because at that point of time, the facilities managers and other stakeholders come into the picture, and it's in their interest to know how does the building function, how are my electrical systems working, how is my intelligent building management system working, and so on and so forth. So throughout the life cycle of the utilization of that building, those information which were collected in the initial phases or the pre-construction and construction stages, they are also used. And after that, there are two options: either the building can be renovated or demolished. In either case, this building information model, it tags along and it helps in all the stakeholders. Now, we've discussed to some detail about what is building information model. So what are the softwares that we use? Unfortunately, people restrict to Revit only, but here on the screen right now, you can see all the different softwares which are being used worldwide by the leading industries and the companies. So there are in the center, you can see Revit, you can see Navisworks. These are the most popular ones, of course. But I would like to invite your attention to the bottom left of the screen where you see conceptual modeling. You can see a blue and yellow icon, which is for Python. Now, some of us might be, they might be curious, why is a programming language being mentioned when we are speaking about building information modeling? Now, quite interestingly, the lines between these industries are blurring steadily. So it is important that we realize what are the benefits and what are the strengths of certain tools and how can we implement them in our day-to-day working. So we are capturing data using drones. We are drafting using AutoCAD or solutions is there. Then for collaboration on the top right, if I may, there is an icon for Slack, which is used. Then Link or Microsoft Teams, as we're using right now, and Trello is also there. So all of these platforms, it's important that we utilize all of them and we capture as much information about the project as we can. Now, going forward, there is another misconception where the people who are deployed on sites or who are working on the construction sites, they believe that the building information modeling and similar schools of thoughts, they are only reserved for the individuals who are in the designing consultancies. I beg to differ, and I would like to explain why. Now, if you're working as a project management consultant or any other construction supervisor on a construction site, so you will see that you need to understand where the clash is going to happen before it actually occurs. So for that, you need to understand how does a Revit model work. There are clash detections, functions which are available in Revit as well as in Navisworks. So here in Tata Consulting Engineers, we leverage upon these technologies and we make sure that before a building is even constructed, in the pre-construction stage itself, we find out what are the clashes which are happening. What basically a clash means is if there is one team which was a structural team was working on beams and columns, and there was another team of electrical engineers who were designing the electrical lines and the HVACs and other lines and layouts. At that point of time, we try to identify, once these two different models are integrated, are they clashing anywhere, or if they are, what are the resolution? So apart from that, apart from the physical clash detection, it's also important that you should get a live flavor or a taste of how I will be experiencing that building. Now, user experiences is another field in digitalization that people are using. They're using virtual reality and augmented reality and mixed reality to some extent, wherein they're trying to show the users that you can experience a building even before it's constructed. So for that, you need tools like Revit and Navisworks, where you can very easily make a walkthrough. Now, basically, what happens in a walkthrough is a model of a person's height of 5 feet or 5.5 feet approximately. You can move it around across a path which you determine, which is predetermined, and you can see how the critical areas of the project look like. Apart from that, quantity takeoffs. When we briefly touched upon procurement, at that point of time, if we want to analyze and if we want to assess the amount of quantity of a particular resource, material, and the stage at which it will be required, it's important that we can assess it from one source of truth. Now, what do I mean by that is, if we are using one model, one three-dimensional model, the quantity takeoffs and quantity estimation should also be done directly from there. This is another feature which Navisworks and Revit provide us. Now, this is something which is very interesting. Now, a lot of people have been speaking about BIM and three-dimensional BIM, 4D BIM. What are those things and what are those jargons that people are throwing around? Now, as you can see, construction simulation is another strength of Navisworks, which you can utilize. So the benefits of a construction simulation basically is that a three-dimensional model, you see it on a timeline. So from day 0 till the final date, how does the construction comes into being? How is the building constructed, and the various aspects of the building as well. This is a project that our team worked on, and before the construction even started, we had a 4-dimensional model which was ready. On the top left, you can see a timeline which is being shown for the project according to the schedule which is prepared by the planners. And here you can see how the 3-dimensional model is changing. So you can see in green the work in progress as well as in the gray or the concrete color, you can see the actual work which is expected to be completed by that date. You can even see here that it's not only restricted to elements of a construction, a building or a plant itself. You can also model according to the various plants or equipments which are going to come in to that building, and you can see the logistics and how they are going to move. And here you can see when the model is completed. Now, evolution of engineering models. Today we are using three-dimensional models and others, but 50 to 60 years back, we started in civil engineering, and gradually we went over to two-dimensional drawings using AutoCAD, which is Autodesk is a very popular tool for that. But today we stand at a precipice where we have 3D models of all the projects approximately. And there is another interesting term which is being used, which is called a digital twin. Now, what is a digital twin? Just to give an analogy to all the civil engineers or structural engineers who have joined us on the call, and I'm sure they would understand it to much greater detail. But as an analogy, you can think of STAAD.Pro and the model that you create in STAAD.Pro as one of the aspects which are created in a digital twin. So what happens in STAAD.Pro is, if a building is supposed to be constructed, before that, we create a model and we see how does that model behave under different loads. That can be done in terms of the dimensions of the dimensions and elements of the construction model, or what are the actions which are expected. But extending that to the other input processes, like what is the amount of energy that this building is going to use, what is the amount of water that this building is going to use, and not just building, if there is a power plant and if you want to see the various simulations of how this power plant will be behaving under different load conditions and others, that can be done from a digital twin. So we hand over a digital twin to one of our clients and we show them the different simulations of how it's performing under different situations. Now, unfortunately, the adoption of different technologies in construction has been very slow compared to all the other industries. And if you see, conventional surveying tools are still the state and they're still the norm. So theodolites, total stations, and others are being utilized. But there are other alternatives which have come up recently. And we at Tata Consulting Engineers, we take immense pride that we are utilizing these tools and we are leveraging upon these technologies and adding value to our clients. So this, what you see here is a LiDAR sensor on a drone, mounted on a drone. So another point that people raise is that the return of investment, or what are the benefits that you get, they pale in front of the cost. I would like to beg to differ there as well. And here is a small presentation. At the bottom, you can see there was a surveying job which was done, and this report was published by Dyke System Alabama company. And at the bottom, you can see that hours per line mile done in the conventional survey and the one done in airborne LiDAR survey, there's a very huge difference between them, approximately 98%, if I'm not wrong. And in terms of costs per mile, the drone and LiDAR system is going to reduce or save up to 90% of your costs. And this is an example of how we are monitoring our construction sites here in Pune also using drone technology. And drones are being utilized to, drones and cameras are being utilized to capture the progress in different stages of a progress of the construction project. And these are officially being submitted to the clients as part of the progress reports. Apart from that, I'd just like to mention another point wherein there are different critical power plants, and one of the chemical plants, I had the opportunity of going there. So they wanted a turnaround, which meant one of their facilities, one of their pipelines had to be shut down for a particular point of time so that they could, they could do the operations and the maintenance job to be done. And they wanted to reduce this time. Now, a key challenge which happened at that point of time was that this particular pipeline or this particular plant did not have any 3D models, because it was so old that at that point of time these technologies did not they were not prevalent. So as a solution, we provided LiDAR services to them. Now what happens with LiDAR basically is it's light detection and ranging scanners, which we just now saw the benefits if they are attached to a drone. But LiDAR scanners can help you create a I would not say 100% accuracy, but at least 20% accurate models which can be created just by scanning. So that is also immensely, it saves a lot of cost as well as the time of the consultants and the clients. Now, just as a closing remark, this is another misconception that we come across many times. What is the future of our industry? Will we be replaced by machines? Is AI going to rule the world? Now, in my personal opinion, I don't think that is the case. I feel softwares and machines and technologies as a whole, they were developed by humans ourselves, and the intention was to increase our productivity. And I think this is what is going to happen, and that is exactly what we're seeing around us also. That we are adopting new technologies in construction, and similarly other industries too. And very soon, I am very confident that this will be the state of the norm for all the other projects. So that was all from my end. Thank you so much for listening. And over to you, Umesh sir.
Thank you, Abhishek. I was wondering whether I was actually watching some kind of a science fiction film or I don't know what, because you gave me, all of us, you gave a picture of our construction industry as something which is going to be a high-tech field. We were actually so far we were thinking about construction in terms of cement, rebars, concrete, bricks, and all. And suddenly you come and give us a picture which is very futuristic and something which involves a lot of digital technologies. I'm sure that's going to be the future. And what actually impressed me was that you said that you are doing all this Tata Consulting Engineers, you are doing this in India. And sometime back, when I was chatting with you, you said that in your company you've been doing this since 2016. So that means even in India, we should now look at these kind of technologies as something which have actually come to stay, not something which is out there in the future. So thank you for giving us that picture and introducing words which are digital twin and all. I'm sure our students should quickly run for a Google search on what digital twin is, how it makes sense in construction industry and like that. So I think in the end, this is something which is going to give us a lot of control on the construction. And for our budding civil engineers, I think this is going to be very interesting, and there's a lot of innovation. Thank you very much for that kind of picture which you gave us. Now
thank you so much.
Now let's move over to our next speaker. I would again briefly introduce him before I hand over to Paresh for a full-fledged introduction. And now I'm talking about Diganta Kapadia, who's the managing director of B. Bilimoria and Company. Now he's an expert which comes from the construction part. When Abhishek was talking from the consultancy side, Digant is going to tell us some stories and share his experience and take us through the actual construction. Of course, there's going to be a futuristic thing in that also, right? So, what in his when I went through his kind of a CV, I was personally impressed about one thing, that he graduated from VJTI with a gold medal. Now, when I graduated, the gold medalists used to go into consulting industry, and they rarely went into construction industry. We have an example here of Diganta Kapadia, who went into construction, and he used all his, I would say, all his brains and everything, for which he was a scholar and for which he earned a gold medal, into that construction industry to rise up to the level of the managing director. So may I request Paresh to formally introduce Mr. Diganta Kapadia.
Yes, sir. Now I would like to introduce our other industry expert with us today, Mr. Digant Kapadia. He is the managing director of BE Bilimoria and Company Limited. He has done his BE Civil as one of the gold medalists from VJTI in the year 1980, and still continue to be attached to the alma mater as a managing committee member of the Alumni Association of which he was also the chairman for 3 years, and through which they have done lots of work in VJTI in the recent past, including making of a new state-of-art which they have completed in only 130 days. Have been continuously into hardcore actual construction right through this span of 40 years. Initially, he was mainly involved into site-based work only, followed by estimation and tendering, then planning and procurement, then cost control and cost monitoring, then business development from the techno-commercial angle, then senior management as a whole. Among the several prestigious projects handled and completed, several high-rise like Planet Godrej, Ashok Towers, Lodha, Bellissimo, and Lodha Park, etc., all above 50 stories. Some landmarks like Nehru Center, IMAX Dome, and Multiplex, Survey Station, IDBI Tower, UTI House at BKC, Bharat Diamond Bourse at BKC, Wankhede Stadium, Antilia for the Ambanis, Hotel Hyatt, Regency, etc. With this brief introduction of our industry expert, I would like Mr. Umesh Dargawkar to take over. Thank you.
Yeah, Diganta, can you come on video, please?
There you are. I guess
good to see you. Now tell me, will you be sharing your screen or would you be just talking? We have.
Just give me for 2-3 couple of minutes to generally do a preamble, and then I think I'll share the screen with
great.
templates.
But the screen sharing will be done by you only at your end.
No. You can go ahead. The templates which I have sent you.
Okay, then you go ahead. I'll need to do that. Okay, fine.
I had sent you the templates.
Please, you cannot do it at your end.
I didn't keep it ready. I thought you were going to do it.
I'll work out something. You please continue. You start your dialogue with the students and let me see what I can do. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, good evening, all of you. I mean, I hope you all are quite enriched by the earlier sessions which is had by Abhishek and Umesh as well, has got his important inputs. And I guess these are all mainly the audience is the budding civil engineer, so to say, which reminds me of my engineering days, which was like almost more than 40 years old, you know. But let me tell you, engineering is engineering at the grassroots level. And I don't think the engineers of maybe 40 years ago or the current engineers are going to be anything inferior or superior, so to say. Now, pausing there for the benefit of the budding engineers, so to say. Primarily, I would say, I mean, let's say, okay, this current session is meant for a pre-construction things, whatever we are doing. And nothing to do with the on construction or during construction or the progress or the completion and all that. So in today's session, I would like to be very simple and very simplistic, and so as to everyone digest the basic concept of how do you plan a pre-construction stage. Pre-construction primarily, as Abhishek described, starts from the designer's point of view, the people who design the thing for a particular client, for a particular requirement of a particular client, be it residential, commercial, industrial, mixed use, or it could be like infrastructure or whatever that may be, you know. That's one part of the role. As you all budding civil engineers may know, okay, there are primarily two distinct sections under which post your graduation or post graduation you all may want to diversify. One is the design part of it, which Abhishek described, etc. And there's a lot of thinking, a lot of work, a lot of technology, and a lot of digitalization happening there, happened also. The other segment is, I'm saying the broad segment. Also, there are going to be sub-segments by the dozens. But the other broad segment is the construction part of it. The designer who designs it has to get implemented by a constructor, a construction agency. Now, that's the aspect which I would like to touch today and enlighten to some extent the already enlightened audience of the civil engineering students. That sometimes maybe some of you may feel okay, that's the hard part of it or the difficult part of it, but then that's how you look at it, I would say. Because if you were to ask me, I mean, an unbiased opinion, okay, design is one part of it, which those days it was quite a manual thing and quite a difficult task. But now with the onset of technology and digitalization, it's also complicated, but it's something which one has to conceive and do it on the screen, in the computer or on paper. But the action lies there where you really need to translate that design. The way the project has been conceived, the way the project has been dreamt by an architect, by a designer into reality, that's the challenge with the constructor faces. And that's the action where I think all of you should not shy away from. And fortunately, nowadays, I mean, in erstwhile days, in the times of, I mean, my time in the civil engineering field, as it is, the thing was considered to be like going on the field was considered to be like maybe dirtying your hands. But these days, I think everyone is more and more eager to get into that because I think that's where the action is. So all the same, don't get disheartened by any which way. Both are equally good, both are equally important, and both are equally interesting and exciting to be in, On one side, you can say, okay, this is the thing which I have monitored, designed, etc. On the other side, okay, this is the thing I have built myself. Not built as in by your own hands, but with your own engineering expertise and with your own methodologies. Technology in construction also has far more advanced. Now, as I said, this is not the section of this webinar that we are going to dwell into the construction technology or the construction monitoring or the construction sequences, etc. It will follow, of course, in due course of time in several other things. Today, I didn't want to dishearten or discourage people going from the field job. And that's why I wanted to say, maybe one of the segments in a pre-construction thing by a construction agency, the major role is played by a designer in a pre-construction stage, but the construction agency also has to play an important role. And one of the major important roles which the construction agency has to play is the bidding process, I guess. Because what does the designer do when the project is conceived and the other thing is concerned? Ultimately, the ball is then thereafter in the court of the construction agencies. So for a construction agency, the role starts right from the bidding stage. Bidding is not necessarily that you are going to be successful and you got the project, but that's one of the biggest challenges to start with. The next challenge comes when you really start construction. We are going to come to that in the maybe the next or the next sessions of webinars. But today, let's say the very first concept, the very first stage at which a construction agency need to play an important pivotal role is the bidding process. And that's where I may like to take you all through a very simple steps of construction, which as a construction company one would visualize. I don't want to scare you all or complicate things so that you all get worried or scared as to how this is. I wanted to purposely show that it's quite simple, but an application of mind is required at every stage, because when a construction agency bids, the bidding has got so much of importance that it's like on a wafer thin or a blade thin sort of an edge that you are going to be balancing act. You sometimes tend to say, do a mistake and underbid, you're going to lose money. Maybe you lose your job also and your face also. If you try to be too cushy and try to go too comfortable, you may lose the project by itself. So it's quite a balancing act that one has to do. And that's where the engineering brains are required to be applied. not just by the execution guys, but the execution team who has to do this exercise prior to getting into an execution field. So I may just want you all to be taken through a couple of basic templates in a tendering process. As I said, now narrowing down the concept of the particular topic of today's discussion, which is the pre-construction, from a construction company's angle point of view, one of the things, important aspect that they have to play a role is the tendering process, the bidding process. So, given the time constraints and today's single webinar and all that, I would like to just take you through a few basic templates that I would like you to share with you all and make you understand as to how that process is carried out. Very simple way, nothing with a specific data and all that. Although each step of this that I'm going to show has got internal lot of complicated backups, lot of complicated calculations. But today, all being, most of you all, I mean, all of you all being students of the engineering section, want to take you only through the basic outline as to how you need to plan and on against which bullet points, against which subheads you need to concentrate and play a role thereafter.
I have a few questions from my side, and then we'll be having questions from the students as well.
Okay.
We see the question is, how did you start? When you start after you got your graduate degree from VJTR, right, with flying colors, then from there to your present stage, what are the stages you have gone through? Because right now you are at the head of that institution. That's why we want to know about that.
See, it's not an easy path, so to say. At the same time, I don't want to discourage or say anything disheartening for the budding students who are there. But I would say one thing, that anytime and always, don't get perturbed by hard work. For sure is there in a civil engineering field, for sure. That is done. That is something which is for granted, that you cannot do anything without any hard work. But at the same time, don't get disheartened by solutions if they are not emerging. As an engineer, you will come across dozens and dozens of problems and to face. And you, at the end of it, for an engineer, it's not the book knowledge only that is going to be useful to you at that time. In fact, book knowledge is something which is brings you up to a certain level of understanding, which is required, which is necessary. But beyond that, it's your personal capability of thinking and going beyond the point in churning out solutions of problems. Problems are going to be there by the hundreds, and they are meant to be solved by the engineers. So the engineer has to know very much as to how to either overcome a problem or sideline it and go around it. Now, these are not something which is unsurmountable or something, or not that you have to be so to say, afraid of any such thing. As far as my path is concerned, as Umesh asked, well, I had set my eyes on a civil engineering field even before I entered engineering. Not that there are quite a few cases, the majority of the maybe civil engineers who eventually get into civil engineering maybe because of default, by default. There are, when you enter into and fill up your form for admissions and all that, and there are choices, at least about say 7 out of 10 or 8 out of 10 will never have civil engineering as the first choice. But I was one of the ones who had civil engineering as a first choice, because in my mind and my vision, somehow that thing was also always there, that I need to be doing, and I had already, even when I was in college, I had fancy for high-rise and tall buildings. And as luck would have it, I mean, and with the grace of God and the other supports that I have had from the elders, etc., most of the tall buildings today standing in India and obviously Bombay were initiated thanks to me, my companies, and we initiated a lot of things. When there was not a single building, even say about 25 storied, we did something like a 33 storied building. When there was nothing beyond 35 storied, we took the challenge of doing a 50 storied building. So these are things which happen. Of course, thereafter, we got the transgression of so many foreign companies coming into here as collaborations or quasi-collaborations or system collaborations, and then you land up into those typical high-rise systems, etc. But let me tell you what we did, the high-rises, and what I had the fortune of getting those things done was absolutely indigenous and absolutely with our Indian technology, with our own technology. We have done right up to the most of the buildings that I have been telling you, except the very recent ones, which are, then on a different scale. And nowadays, it is very imperative to always have a so-called collaboration with some foreign company so as to build up your credentials and maybe pre-qualified to build for a, say, 80, 90-story building. But it is nothing impossible for us to do it indigenously at all. So please don't get disappointed.
Yeah, but what kind of structures do you handle in your company? You handle buildings only, or you handle infrastructure?
Our focus has been purely buildings. Now, buildings could be of anything like right from residential being the core, industrial, commercial, theaters, multiplexes, stadiums, any such thing, but primarily building stations, etc. We are not into pure hardcore infrastructure, as in the roads and the dams or the power stations and all that. We are purely mainly into this. So in construction also, for the benefit of students, when I said, I already said each, when you say in construction field, there are several verticals. So in that, there are so many things. One can go for infrastructure-based things or a power station. There are specialist things, a building thing, or so many such verticals are there in execution also. We and me have been all along this path, been more focused on the buildings, high-rises, complicated buildings, structural work, and so on and so forth. Although we have done, and we did have quite a few stints in the bridge segment also, which was mainly, but that was quite a long time. We did almost not less than about 15 bridges on the Konkan railway section when that was put up. And those were the times, when really speaking, those bridge works and all that were happening in a different way. And those were quite challenging also. But that's the only stint we had in the bridges. And around that time, we did some bridges. But primarily, more or less, we have been focusing on the building structures. Use could be, end use could be anything.
Yeah. One student's question has come. He wants to know, will a management degree be required for rising into the management levels in a construction company, or pure engineering degree will be enough?
Well, these days, yes, I would say it is an add-on feather in the cap. In our time, when we passed, say, 40 years ago, it was on doing an engineering graduation itself was quite an achievement, and that was it, But for a construction field. But these days, I would say yes, because with a goal to increase your adaptability to the construction field and to the construction segments, which are getting more and more advanced. So I definitely will advise the student to pursue a management thing, but not straight away. I would not advise straight away going after a graduation into a management thing. Then that is just a bookish thing that you will end up. Take a break, maybe take 2 years of working thing and then go into a management thing. That's the ideal combination. Yeah, see, I was talking about a tendering stage. So initially I said deciding on a tender, whether you are there or not. The next stage comes, you need to prepare your points, and for the pre-bid meetings, there are going to be a floating of inquiries, rate analysis, enclosures, price bid, price schedule. I'm giving a summary of things which one has to do as an engineer, because this is not just a simple thing. The tender preparation is not something that you just fill something and go, because there are going to be a huge lot of exercise behind that, which is required by none other than the engineer. So engineers are not necessarily have to be only on the technical side. They have to be a lot on the say correspondence, on the commercial angle, on the calculations, on the schematics, on the graphics, etc. So many things are going to be there. Next slide, please. Umesh, who is, so next one, please. I'm showing you a few format samples. Now, this is one of the formats which we normally, okay, this is a very basic thing. One has to do a very, very extensive thing on that as to what are the type of contracts, what is the type of thing, what is the scope of work, what is the basic conditions, or what is the architect, what is the consultant, etc. So we prepare this, the estimating engineer has to prepare this sort of charts for the management to see. I mean, I myself done in those years when I was out of college and maybe much younger. Now I am presented this by the youngsters. Next one, please. This is a summary of contracts continuation as to these are the things which, as I said, as an engineer, it is not only the technical part you have to do. You will have to do everything. Like, for example, things are like that. What are the commercial terms? What is it going to affect? What is the retention? What's the defect liability period? What are the punitive damages? What are the liquidated damages? Everything is different. Unfortunately, in our country, each contract is of a different type. It is not like a standardized contract conditions. Each contract one has to go through thoroughly, and that is the engineer's role. Next one, please. Sorry for my hurrying up because I think now the timing is too short, but whatever time that we lost, I'll have to make it up in this and rather keep it open for question and answer session rather than boring you with this formats or something. This is again a summary of project which we already saw through. Can we see the next one? Some of the examples that we are giving, you know, that what you will have to see as an engineer. Can we see the next slide, please? This is like a typical site visit report. Again, it's going to be much more elaborate, but primarily just to give you a glimpse of it, just to give you an idea of it as to maybe you may see in this 1 or 2 slides, maybe 20, 30, 40 points. But a site visit report by the engineers has to be such an explicit one that it's that based on that one the bid will be prepared. So you go wrong in that and you could go haywire wrong. You know, haywire means it could be price wise, it could be like estimation wise, it could be time wise also. You are, because when you prepare a bid and estimation, it's not only the price, it's the time also. Time versus price is the most important factor. Can we see the next? These are, I am giving you some 20, 30 things that a normal engineer will be expected to go and prepare a detailed report. This is the summary of that very basic points I'm trying to show you. Next one, please. Yeah, this is some set 30 points are given, but overall, if you really go to see job to job, it will differ. It may go sometimes to say 50 points. This is the typical example. Thereafter, after you have collected all those pre-bid things, all the site reports, etc., you need to get on with your real rate analysis. And it's a very, very extensive exercise. Again, that is something which is not going to come off the book because you do books and there are books which are available, which you may refer, you are going to want to go wrong. It's on the actual experience, the actual thing that you are going to do. Some of the examples as a very basic template I'm showing you. Each one will have lots of in-depth analysis to be done, a lot of in-depth depending activities to be derived on. Next one, please. These are some of the examples of the rate analysis. We can just skip through that. These are all analysis, some of the things which I am trying to show you. Now, the enclosures, when you really submit a particular bid, once you have done all your information collection, all your rate analysis, your pricing are done, your programs are done, etc., there has to be a bunch prepared for submission because that's then going to be the key. Your bid acceptance or rejection is going to depend on the type of submission that you do, not just the pricing part of it. Maybe in a government tender, it's just the pricing, but there also these are very important now, unlike the olden days where price was the only thing. There are lots of marks given for each of the items. Dozens of them are there. Some of the typical things that I am showing is that, see, why you may think as to why this, sir, you have been burdened with this. What I'm trying to say is that engineering roles are tremendous, much more than what you may feel. It is just like doing some concrete or steel or something from a construction angle. No, these are so many things one engineer has to play a role. And in those sort of sections and situations, engineer has to play the role at times of an accountant, at times of an admin clerk, at times for HR. Everything is a common role. So that is why most of you may also feel a lot of times in engineering, there are a lot of subjects which are unrelated to engineering. Why? Because engineer has to have a holistic view of the whole thing. Next one, please. This is just a typical construction schedule, a basic one, because let me tell you, at the time of bidding, one submits only a very basic one. But I would like to highlight a thing here for the young budding engineers, that project planning is a very vast field and a very interesting field. I don't think any one of you should take it very lightly, because the whole success or failure of a project at the end of it is going to depend on how well you have planned your project, how well you have planned each activity, how well you have broken up the resources for each activity, the timing of each activity, the sequencing of each activity. This is a very primary thing which maybe you all have studied in college, but I would advise students to definitely go very deep into this subject, one of the subjects which is, this is the time that you all can go through it. Maybe after 10, 15 years of passing out, you will not be able to get into that. There are a lot of things, whether it is an MS project or a Primavera or something, the software tools are available. But at the end, it is your mind which is important here, because you will have to break up each activity, each schedule in days, in the resources, in the sequencing, and that's nothing but an engineer's job. So, mind you, students, this engineering is not on the field, is not just book work, but it is something which, and this sort of scheduling will differ from each project to project. It cannot be just a copy-paste thing. It will not work that way. It will not work on approximation, because you may do that just for the sake of submission initially, but if you execute a job that way, you are bound to fail or lose, maybe lose money, lose time, everything. Next one, please. Thank you. At least I had to rush through the slides, but all the same, I think some other time when we go into a better field, we will manage to see that the slides and other things are well controlled. Thank you, Umar.
Yeah, first of all, I am sorry that about all this goof up that happened about the technology, but fortunately we could come back and you could at least give us some glimpses of what you actually wanted to say. To sum up what I understood from your presentation, first and foremost, what you said, that the action lies in the construction. That's exactly what it is, because whatever the consulting engineer or the project management consultant does, he actually defines the project. He draws up the contractual agreement or maybe tender documents, everything, bills of quantities. But it's the contractor who's actually going to execute the project. In that sense, what you said exactly is true, that the action lies on the construction side. In fact, if I may put it so, that the game of construction is actually played on the site and not in an office. Now, one more point one more thing which I would like to add from my side is the contractor who is squarely responsible for completing the project in time, completing the project in the given cost, and with the desired quality. So in that sense, there is a lot of responsibility that the contractor has to have on top of his head in terms of the deliverables which is supposed to give to the client. You made a very big point when you said that engineers, that's what any construction company, actually when they come into that, they have to do so many things. Some of them may not be exactly hardcore engineering, but nonetheless, those things are required to actually do the business of the company for which they will be working. And then every company could have the systems and formats like the ones which you showed it to us, which will make the life of an engineer a little more systematic, a little easier, so that he also learns when he is executing through those systems and through the formats, he learns the tricks of the trade. And finally, you said that this work, all this work which is done at the site, is not book work. It's a lot of hand work, and more than software. You also said that beyond all the softwares is the mind that has to work, and that's where the engineering comes into action. Thank you very much, Digant, for all these insights. Now, I think we still have a few minutes or something to continue with question and answers. Abhishek, can you come on video, please?
Sure, sir.
Yeah. So I would like to ask first, because Abhishek has been absent for a long time. Now, what kind of, now you gave us a lot about technology, right? But when a fresh engineer would come or join your office, obviously you won't be knowing anything about that, right? But it's through him only that eventually, or after a certain time or after a certain period of time, you'll be expecting the same thing, the same kind of technology involvement from him. So how would you train him to do the kind of work which you are doing in your office? He becomes like a fresh engineer to you.
Thank you for asking that question, sir. That's a very important question, particularly for the audience right now. So all the budding graduates have recently graduated from their college. They might have such conceptions and misconceptions. So at Tata Consulting Engineers, we take training very seriously, and to execute the same, just like you mentioned, if graduate is hired from campus or off campus, we have a program called YEDP, which is Young Engineers Development Program, and I was fortunate enough to be a part of that. So we have 4 months of classroom training where all the aspects of the project are taught to us before we are assigned to a particular team or a particular department. We are taught in and out of all the aspects about the project, whether those are in terms of engineering processes. And then at the end of it, there is also a capstone project where we implement all the learnings into a full-size model. Like, for an example, I'll just to give an example, my team worked for a project, the stadium project, and what that basically meant was that we had to, the engineering team, the civil engineers and the structural engineers were responsible for the structures of the stadium, as well as we had 3 architects who were working on the aspects of how the design would come into being, the conceptual design. Then we had mechanical teams who were working on the HVACs and plumbing and MEPs, then electrical teams, and so on and so forth. So we got a real flavor of how things are on the project before we jump into it directly.
So that hand-holding, or say that training is done right in the beginning.
Exactly.
So you put them into training and then absorb them. But does this training continue in form of hand-holding throughout this thing, or there comes a time when you actually tell? So how much time would elapse until that stage comes when that engineer is actually entrusted with a responsible kind of a job wherein he has to do a lot of things all by himself?
All right. So, sir, just to answer your question now, we've seen how the classroom training model works. So for 4 months, we are there. All the disciplines and all the graduates from all across India, they are combined into various permutations and combinations of teams, and we are working on projects and simulations. After that, they are assigned their respective teams. Like an electrical engineer or a civil engineer goes to work in a particular business unit or a particular team. After that, what happens is even beyond that point, after those the initial phase, we have 6 months of on-the-job training. So we have another buffer period where we are encouraged to use the learnings, and so learning is a process. And I, to till this date and age, I still believe very firmly that I'll have every intention to keep on learning as much as I can. So that learning process goes on. But answering your question about when are we expected to start giving results or when we are accountable, I think it happens after the end of 1 year, which is a significant amount of time. And by then we are through with our classroom trainings. We are through with a buffer on-the-job training and hand-holding also. And after that, slowly and steadily, and it does not happen at the end of the duration directly, but slowly and gradually we are given responsibilities where we can handle on our own. And that's how it is.
Digant, can I, if I have to ask you the same question to you? Yeah. Can you come on video and stay on video?
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. So if I have to, of course, you are quite senior at that level. So perhaps I do not know whether it is appropriate to ask you here. When a fresher joins your company, is there some kind of because when a fresher comes, he sees if you are talking about 50-story building, he will say just wow, and he will start wondering whether he can be a part of such a large project. In that case, the initial hand holding, or do you first of all hire freshers at all in your company?
No, we do hire, and obviously you have to have, because the cycle has to keep on going on. And I would say overall a period of training into different disciplines of the construction segment only, one should allow a period of close to 2 years. Not that 1 year is going to be enough for something. Now, in the sense that segments, there are various segments. Normally we'll try to shuffle the fresh engineers from each segment, right from, say, maybe preparing a bar bending schedule, or maybe getting into a concrete mix design, and then it will be sometime maybe into a quantity surveying thing. Each segment is quite elaborate, After doing all these things at the site level only, we will shift him or her to the estimation and tendering department, because an estimator or a tendering person will be of no value or no knowledge, worth knowledgeable value, if he or she doesn't know what's really required to be done at the site. So even an estimation or this, so turning around all this field, I would say a minimum period of 2 years is primarily required, which we could take, and then we see who is more inclined towards which segment, who is more excelling in which segment, and try to put that person in that. So suppose someone is very good, very bad in, say, the actual field execution, but very good at quantity surveying. A lot of people are good at that. So maybe then he or she is more designated there in future. But they have to have the experience of all round, of not only the quantity surveying, but right from, say, preparation of a bar chart, a program, activity schedule, a resource schedule, a manpower schedule, getting into a bar bending schedule, getting into a concrete scheduling. All those things will have to be done by an engineer, and a minimum turnaround period for getting at least a fair idea of the various segments of construction activity on should be 2 years. And that's why I recommended that if one wants to go for management, which I highly recommend, should be after that 2-year period or so.
Okay, and now you talked about so many things, which like say bar bending schedule and things they have to learn. Now, apart from that, I think in today's context, students should also have some kind of soft skills, things about, documentation, maybe facing a person, discussing, or say maybe negotiation with understanding the negotiation part, or making a presentation. How important is that for a person who enters into a construction?
It's very, very important, but that is not going to be doable at the initial stages.
Okay.
Now, before a person can prepare a presentation of something, or before a person can come into a correspondence into something, or before a person can get into evaluating a certain thing, that person, that engineer should know the various segments, how it happens or where it happens. Without that, how is that person going to get be good at all those activities? So, person will have to undergo all that circular activities, and then you transgress and rather get yourself into that particular mode. As I said, engineering is all round; it is not just technical. You'll have to do correspondence, you'll have to do presentation, and you'll have to do. I mean, lot of times even legal. Leave apart this, because there are a lot of times, lot of legal angles one has to see also. And a civil engineer is also at times not only saddled with the civil engineering problem, but electrical engineers requirement or a mechanical engineer's requirement. A lot of times at the project site are not there immediately at the initial stages. It is the civil engineer's job to take care of those things also, because electrical or the mechanical engineers at the project site who work, they come in at a much later stage after at least the shell is almost getting ready.
And you mentioned that our contracts are not uniform. Nobody is following uniform types of contracts, so that makes it all the more difficult.
Unfortunately, no.
Yes.
all over the world, see, there is a standard, say, let's say most of the Western countries, they follow a FIDIC condition.
Yes.
So when you say FIDIC, they know in and out, okay, there could be some minor variation, which they will also designate and mention it separately. So you know the base contract. Whereas here in our country, you know very well that every contract document is on its own. Every department, government department also has their own. So the engineer job becomes more difficult to go through each and get accustomed to all those things. One cannot just copy paste anything and say, okay, in this contract it is this, that is there. That is something which I think we all along were trying also to get standardized. Unfortunately, it didn't work. I would recommend and strongly advise the younger generation to definitely take up down the line to conglomerate all the contracts, whether it is government, private, corporate, semi-government, etc., into a contract of like the law of the land, there should be the contract of the country. Variations in that should come about, okay, but then one has to worry only about the variations. That is something which is achievable, and now that India is also getting progressed into more of a streamlined manner among other world countries, the youngsters, I think, should have that in mind also. That is the another one thing. Again, an engineer's job, a contract studying, contract condition studying is also an engineer's job. So engineering is an all-round thing, it's not just technical thing.
I think that's one nice thing you said, contract of the country, and I am really hoping that it happens someday. Now coming to you, Abhishek, being in a consulting field, when you are hiring a new fresh graduate, would you prefer a BTech with 2 years experience or a fresh entry? This is a question which has come from a student.
All right. So, sir, we have two different channels for that. So, as I mentioned, Young Engineers Development Program, the YEDPs, are fresh graduates without any experience. And if there is a person who has 2 years of experience who meets the criteria and the requirements which are there for the particular vacancy that he or she is applying for, so they are hired as laterals. So both of the channels are open.
Yeah, and one more question has come. Let's say let me see, read that. Just now it has come. Significance of Python in project management.
Correct. I was going through the comments on YouTube and I wanted to address them. Just before answering that question, all the viewers right now, you please feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. If some of your questions are not resolved, I'll be more than happy to connect with you. So answering that question on Python. So sir, right now it's a industrial, or I'll say it's a global phenomenon where Excel is called the mother of all softwares. So if you have to do, just like sir mentioned, if there is bar bending schedule, if there is an Excel chart or sheet or whatever is supposed to be made, all of us are using Excel. But unfortunately, what we have ignored to this point of time is, I would not say ignored, but because we have become comfortable with the software to an extent that we do not want to look at other alternatives. So Python is a coding language, just like C++ and others. Now, what is happening is other institutes like NUS in Singapore and other management colleges, they are teaching programming languages to the postgraduates. The reason being that the weaknesses of Excel and other similar basic softwares, they're overcome by Python. So I'll give you an example. Now, if you want to create, we spoke about digital twins a while ago. So what happens in a digital twin is if you're constructing a building and you want to see all the simulations of how much load can it take, or how much water does it take, or energy requirements of that building, etc., etc. All of those simulations can be very smoothly conducted on Python. Apart from now, there are those weaknesses of Excel, which because we've been using Excel for so long, we think that if something cannot be executed there, it must be impossible. But that is not the case. So Python is one of those languages for arithmetic, programming and data sciences, artificial intelligence and machine learning. People are using R and Python everywhere. So I would encourage all the students now to answer that question in a bit more detail, if I may take 1 more minute. So if you're interested, if you want to learn more, you can go to platforms like Udemy, and you can go to Coursera and other. So there are MOOCs everywhere. There are open learning solutions, and you can take up those courses and you can see what it does and how it's affecting and impacting the construction industry. in the whole sense. So yes.
Yeah, and you showed us a very big picture of digitalization and things like that, which makes the concept quite complex. Now, if it's going to be that big and that futuristic, what role can small project management consultants play? Can they provide? Can they have? Can they find some kind of assignments or something in which they can practice, or
Sure.
just because it becomes so damn complex, it is going to come to the company like Tata Consulting Engineers only?
I think, sir, just like in our consultancy business and other construction business or any other business for that matter, smaller, we call in construction planning, we call it work breakdown structure, or in project management also. We break a huge problem into smaller manageable tasks. And after that, further, we break it down into even smaller activities. And once it's executable, we package them. And after that, we execute them. So the same thing can be done for this understanding also, in this analogy also. So if there is a huge model which is to be constructed or a data model to be done, a small project manager or a small firm can also be offloaded, or they can be as a subcontractor or support system for the EPC or any other contractor, or to the client himself maybe. So the work can be broken down.
You mean that those services can be given to the contractor more than directly to the clients?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. Now, I think perhaps the last question to Digant. Digant, can you come on screen? Yeah. Digant, one question. Of course, this doesn't necessarily pertain to the today's context of pre-execution. Just to understand, since you are there, has the technology innovation or technology integration started in the actual construction field also? When you are constructing.
Sorry, come again. It's broken.
No. Yeah.
It got broken in between.
Yeah. Okay. So my question is, the technology innovation which is happening and technology integration which is happening in the consulting field. Now, is it also coming to the construction field? Although, I mean, it's not. I'm not talking about a pre-execution. I'm just asking you on the sidelines of that. In the construction field, is the technology really coming into India? Sorry, you did get the question?
Yeah, it is definitely. Yes, construction cannot be behind any other field, so to say. Let's face it, construction and civil engineering is the mother of all engineering, as it always used to be called, And technology advancement does happen, always happens, and it is happening, because if you don't do the technological advancements, you are going to be thrown out of the market in any which way. And as it is, more and more complicated structures are being designed, are being undertaken for construction. So new technologies, advancements in technologies are bound to happen and will happen, and they are happening also as well. Because so what I was doing myself in my career span of 40 years, the way I was doing it maybe 35 years ago and where it is being done now is far different. Definitely far different, and definitely far more sophisticated, controlled way. And systems are evolving, new systems of construction are evolving. I'll give you one of the examples. Till maybe a couple of years, we are all used to a construction. I'm talking about any structures. We were used to a in situ construction, whether structural or concrete. These days, the ingress of a precast system, what in a country like India, it was never been done much, because India so-called was always supposed to be a cheap labor and ample labor available. It was never getting into that, but European countries were into that. But in India also, it is coming that the precast technology, it can be for anything and everything today. Precast means it's something like the quality controls are there, the speed is tremendous, and the chances of going wrong are absolutely nil. So technologies are evolving. Even I would say we are ourselves got into this new technology of precast, because I think down the line, the way the needs of the country are going to be there for a populous country like us, precast or something even beyond precast, something is bound to be the answer to the future, not the usual way that we do the buildings and the houses and so many things. Because quantity, speed, and quality are going to be the key word. And in order to achieve that, you cannot shy away from getting into technological advancements.
So these new futuristic technologies shouldn't they be part of our academic curriculum also slowly?
Definitely. In fact, as I told you, so my alma mater VJTI, where I am still trying to get attached in whatever which way little I can. I do propagate to them that you have to get more into the advancements and so many things. Unfortunately, the colleges in India, they are governed by the so-called curriculums and the academicians and all that. So there's not much of a liberty by the institutes to deviate too much from the curriculum, because then A student from A college, from B student from the B college, something, there is no parity, disparity is there. But there are now the things are coming that IIT was only the initiator, that they have autonomy in selecting, academic autonomy also, which now is getting into the mode in some other institutes also, and slowly you will get. And I think that's where the key lies, that when you have an academic autonomy for the institute can adopt. In an institute like VJTI, we are also trying to push them, but it is still in that old thinking way, so they take time to change. That's the problem. But I will definitely want to advocate that, and I will definitely want the youngsters of today, the engineers coming out from today, to be far more advanced and comparable with other engineering students coming out of maybe a Harvard or a Stanford or whatever that is. Why should we be backward? Because our students do the best in the world at the end of it. So why not at the undergraduate level only? I definitely support that.
Yeah, so I would now like to conclude this, and just would like to uh, get the final remarks from you on this initiative which ISSE, Indian Society of Structural Engineers, which you have undertaken. There are two objectives here. I think I'm now trying to relate this to our discussion. Two objectives here. One is to make the transition of fresh graduates from institute to industry more meaningful to both, and smoother. This is one. And the second is to make the civil engineering education industry relevant. Can I have your views on this very quickly in a couple of lines, each of you?
I would advocate the primary thing. What is happening is in our degree course, especially in Bombay and so many places, we were not having any so-called internship sort of thing inbuilt, which is, I think, they should become part of the curriculum. And a lot of institutes all over the world, maybe you can increase the course by 1.5 years or something, but 2 stints of say maybe 6 months each at intervals should be made maybe compulsory as part of the curriculum for an internship. That will give them the interaction with the industry and all that, and that will give them, they will be ready to get adopted by the industry once they pass out. And they'll nowhere be considered as a too much of a freshman and too much of a raw engineer. So that's something which we should advocate in inculcating in the institute's level itself. And the industry will be happy to have the interns.
What will be your take, Abhishek, on this?
I really appreciate the platform that you've created and the group has created for fresh graduates, because this is just like Digant sir also mentioned very correctly. Now, there is a gap between what is being taught in the, academic institutions and what are the expectations of industries and companies. So this platform is a great opportunity for all the people who can connect here. And I think the next step for this could be if you can also help them in interacting, just like Digant sir mentioned. So if there are industry experts who want to hire or who want internships, the people who require internships and those who are providing, they can be connected. There's another step that we can take forward.
Exactly.
But yeah, I am really thankful. Thank you so much for having me here. It was a pleasure to interact with you and all the students. Yes.
And thank you, both of you, for spending your time with us and being here.
And I really appreciate the effort that you people are doing. I mean, you and your entire team of office bearers of the association. I would say it's a commendable work happening and a selfless thing. The students of the current batches are really going to benefit from such interactions. So please keep it up and please let it grow more and more with the attendance and the spread of this. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you
for your time. We are closing it today. Thank you very much.